In this episode of GYDA Talks, Robert sits down with Timothy Armoo. Timothy is the CEO of Fanbytes, a digital agency which helps the world's largest organisations, such as the UK government, Apple and Deliveroo, win the hearts of younger audiences on Snapchat and TikTok.
I'd like to talk about what's going on in America. I mean, you've been fairly clear online about how upset you quite rightly are, and what your team is doing to respond.
Yeah,
Maybe you'd just like to just talk us through that.
sure. So I think one of the things so I went so to understand, especially for me, why so much of this matters to me. So I was lucky enough to get like a scholarship to a school called Christ Hospital. It's like a sixth form boarding school.
Is that the one when
One
they
of
wear habits? Is that the one?
Yeah, so we wear like these long yellow
Dresses.
socks and
Yeah.
we march into lunch every day. Yeah, basically like Harry Potter, but in the UK. And and um, and it's interesting, right? Because even from then, I think I was never quite aware of like my race. I was just like, yeah, cool, whatever. Just I'm a black guy, whatever. Go on. And then went to Warwick. That was cool. No one ever really gave me any issues about it. And then when I started Fanbyte as a business, I was like, again, I'm very much about like do the best work and the best work gets seen. Like I don't really care about that type of thing. And then I started to, get asked to speak at events and conferences, and I started going to these conferences where I'm, 5,000 people, 10,000 people, and I'm speaking at these events, and it's like, I'm the only black person there. And I remember there was even once I was on a panel, or no, like someone asked me to be on a panel about diversity, and it was like, I looked at the people on the panel. I was like, "Are you like these guys are here talking about diversity?" And it's like everyone just looks the same. So at first I was like, "Yeah, okay, cool." And then with this, so it was kind of then that I started to realize, okay, this is interesting. Like in the technology space and the advertising space, like in both of those industries, there aren't particularly a lot of people who look like me. So I was just like, well, maybe they just haven't had the roots in and stuff. Cool. But then I think when these things like, a couple of years ago when with Eric Garner, right, when he just got killed by the police, and then I kept hearing these things. And then with this George Floyd thing, where I watched the 8-minute video and I was just like I've just seen a murder. Like I have just seen a murder. Someone has just been killed. And I think it was when I started to, it was kind of around when Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin. I was like, it does seem as if that, sure, with the police brutality, I haven't ever experienced that. I've never been arrested. I was saying this to my girlfriend, like personally, I don't think I've ever had like a direct racist thing, like ever. But then I started to just like go, right, if you look at it from a bigger scope, you start to realize that they're just very odd, like systematic things, which it's not so much that people are, directly racist, like, coming to you and, like saying the N-word or something to you. But like, it's just these little things where because people just are not aware of the way they act, they therefore act in ways which just puts down black people, right? A good example is, is fundraising, right? So I'm very fortunate that we've raised like over 1.5 million in funding. We have like great investors, etc. But I speak to a lot of my other black founder friends, and they say they're struggling. I'm like, your idea is great. Like, I've actually invested in a few of their ideas, and I've shown it to like other people I know. And then it's just been like, yeah, I don't understand the space. Or like, you know, I can't, like, you don't fit the typical kind of like, you know, maybe like privately educated, you know, middle class, you know, type person who I can almost like tick the box in my mind and say, I empathize with you, right? And so when we kind of, when I peel that back up, and I was like, there is systematic like racism, but it's not like I it's people who are not actively being racist, but it's more like because they're just not aware of it, they just go, well, that's just life. So then that's when I then said, okay, this thing. And then because I was just so, you know, I was so pissed off when I was watching that video, when I was just like, this is a murder. Like, God, like, this is a murder. Like, we have just looked at a man be murdered. This isn't some mistake or anything like that. And then you look at all the other videos, and you're like, you know, a guy was just jogging through a neighborhood. People are like, oh, he must be a burglar, and then shot. It's just like, come on, right? And I saw that, I was like, cool. The least I can personally do as an individual is donate to, you know, both the George Floyd Fund and the Minnesota Fund. So I donated like to my last month's salary, but then all my speaking gigs for the year so far and the ones upcoming. So for the year so far, my salary, you know, I think I gave about, you know, in the tens of thousands. And I was like, cool, fine. And then I said, as an agency, I want us to do something because I am a CEO of an advertising company, and I am one of the very few in there. And then I said, well, I'm actually gonna just bring this up with the rest of the team because sure, I'm the CEO and I'm Black. My co-founder is Black and also from Ghana, and my other co-founder is from Nigeria. So we are 3 Black people leading an advertising company. And so I put in a Slack channel. I said, guys, I know you guys care about this because I can see on everyone's social media they're talking about it. So I said, okay, I know you guys care about it, and I think that we as an agency should do something about it. We will provide whatever the funding that is needed, but I want us to make a collective action behind it. You can fill up this form anonymously if you want, or you can do it with your name on it. But I want us to put some actual firepower behind this. And I did that yesterday, and the responses have just been incredible. Like literally reading them at 12 midnight, where like you can see also, obviously these people have worked with us for quite a lot of time. You can see, you know, even if some of them didn't put their name, you can see who said what, and you're like, wow, like I didn't, you know, so I didn't realize this meant so much to you. And we are now putting a number of things in place. We'll be announcing them soon, but a number of things in place, like even in our industry, especially the influence industry, several examples of like, historically, we see actually that Black influencers, because we put them on a lot of campaigns, they actually perform about 1.9 times more from a click-through rate than average, because they are seen as just much more relatable, and just like when they're talking to the audience is much more of like it's just like an easier conversation and stuff like that. So they perform 1.9 times better. But when our campaigns people put them on some campaign plans with those stats, like literally showing this person performs better, the brand wouldn't choose them. You're like, wait, what? Why? And it's because, like, again, it's not obvious racism, but it's because, like, in, you know, the marketing manager's mind, like they have an idea of who is the perfect person to represent them. And it's not them going, it's not a black person, right? But like in their mind, it's, you know, we're looking for this type of person who is, you know, like female, white, probably middle class, and probably, you know, like does this, does that. And you're like, I get where you're coming from, because in your mind, you didn't think of this person, but then it becomes a bit of an awkward conversation to have with like between the campaign manager and them. If you're like, is the reason why you chose this, didn't choose this person, like because they're black? Because that tends to be the reason, but it's not because the person says no, like no black people. It's because just like in their mind, they have this idea of what, you know, what a successful influencer means in their mind. So there's so many things that we're doing.
There was an interesting thing on the, I can't remember who it was yesterday, saying that actually in the UK, the racism is more subtle. So
Yeah.
in America, it's absolutely blatant. It's still get out of my bar. Whereas in the UK, everyone kind of plays lip service to it, but then they don't act, or they forget to act, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, yeah, and it's what, yeah, like I think that phrase that you put was a perfect phrase. They like forget to act, right? So people don't go F you, people don't go blah blah. It's more just like, you don't fit the idea of what I have for this, and so I don't quite know like what I'm going to do, right? Like I don't quite know where to place you. And I say this a lot, like I say this so many times when I speak to my friends for like fundraising and investors and all that stuff, where sometimes it's just because, and I know that, for example, in Silicon Valley, and the reason why it's very hard for like people of color to raise money, for example, is because like you don't fit the Ivy League dropout. So therefore it's like, oh, okay, like tell me more about your idea. Like tell me, you know, let's go into deep detail about this. Whereas it's like, oh, Ivy League dropout. Well, Zuckerberg kind of did this, so yeah, let me back it, right? It's a weird one. So we are actively doing some things to make some steps, both in the influencer perspective, but also in just like the advertising world perspective. And I'm very excited about that.
So everyone talks about diversity, okay? Everyone from the big consulting firms, the government, everywhere says diversity creates better solutions,
Yeah.
I can name probably two agencies that are what I would call proper multicultural. In other words, white males are the minority. And is that just because people are paying lip service to it? I mean, in general diversity. So that's not just about race. That's about sexuality. It's about the whole way through. So do you think the diversity debate, which is slightly different from what we've been talking about, is a lip service thing, because they do feed into each other?
Yeah. So I was talking about this with one of my investors. So one of my investors is a guy called Nigel Morris. He was the CEO of Dentsu, and we're talking about this because he also had that same thing. It was like he's been on so many panels and all diversity, etc. I think the reason why, so I think that it often comes across as lip service, primarily because, well, for two things. The first one is because the actual change that is being driven, or like the ideas behind the change, often stem from people wanting to feel less uncomfortable, rather than people wanting to actually implement something practical. So a good example is people having a lot of these panels and say, you know, we'll bring people together so they can be inspired and meet other people, etc. And you're like, but actually what, like the key thing, especially with diversity in advertising, is just giving people clear access and opportunity. So by the clear access and opportunity is going, yeah, I know people are gonna, talk some shit about it, but I'm gonna create these 5 to 10, these 5 to 10 positions specifically for, black females or black males or LGBT. Like, and I know people are gonna go like, oh yeah, but what about the white people, etc. And like, well, I am actively want to increase the pipeline of this because I don't think people are asking to say lower the barriers for me so that I can get in. People are going just like make a conscious effort to make a path for these people, and the people who choose to walk through that, like we would choose the best people. And I think people go, we need more diverse faces, and it's just like, oh, okay, well, let's just talk about it, and hopefully they will go through the same path that, like, you know other people have gone through. But the problem is people can't go through the same path that other people have gone through because they have their own nuances. And the second thing is which is so blindly obvious, and I didn't realize it now until I started getting involved in this, is a lot of times people don't actually, the change isn't driven by the people who can drive the change. So like, you go, I want to have more diverse people, but then it is, that whole initiative is led by someone who in themselves is not a diverse person. Like, I want more black people. All right, cool. So all these programs are going to be run by like a white person. It's kind of like, but like for example, when I said, I was speaking to a friend of mine who runs a really successful podcast, and I said, and he hit me up and he said, like, what can he do? And I said, right, you have a podcast which is listened to by some of the top VCs, angels, and founders. Why don't we get like 5 startups run by black founders and come on there and get them to like pitch, basically, and if they pitch, we kind of do like a Dragon's Den type thing. And then he was like, that's a sick idea. And I was like, it took me 30 seconds to come up with this, right? But it's because I understand the context of the people, so I can go, cool. But if, say, for example, someone like him, he's a great guy and stuff, so that's fine. But like someone like him was left to their own devices, to be like, cool, let's now have a meeting about how we can do this. Let's now do this. Let's now do an event. And I'm like, well, just do this. And if you want the 5 founders, I personally, I'm just going to send texts to them and go, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? And just like that, we got 5 founders done, dusted. So I think it does have to do with that whole idea of like people actually just almost like the change is not being driven by the people who are the effect of the change. And that's very hard to do anything.
Okay, so one of the things I was picking up, which I love about what you're saying online, is you're not just saying this is wrong, this is wrong. You're trying to get some action. You're trying to get stuff happening, which isn't just complaining, but actually trying to demonstrate there's a different way of doing stuff. So can you just explain that without giving away too much of anything's being plotted? What kind of stuff you're hoping to achieve?
So I mean, I can just share one which we're about to announce. Basically, one of the things is obviously that if you are, say, a black influencer or a black creator, you're often overlooked. And even if you have the great, as I mentioned, the results, the traffic, etc., because you don't like fit that idea, people go, cool. So a number of things we're doing is firstly what we're doing is having a more active approach to going, creating and saying, these are all the black influencers we've worked with, these are their click-through rates, this is how they worked with this brand, this is etc. And we would actually like put that front and center to the brand, because sometimes I think just people don't remember that. The other thing is we are actually coming up with a fund. So we're putting in our own cash to actually support businesses who are targeting this audience who are going to be using Black influencers, like we ourselves will fund the campaigns, and we would just like fund the entire campaigns, pay the influencers on time, do all that stuff, because on two things. Firstly, generally access to capital is one of the things that stifles a lot of Black businesses. But then the other thing, the Black creators themselves sometimes get overlooked. So if we can basically come in and go, cool, Black-owned businesses, we will fund your marketing campaigns. Black creators, we will pay you guys. Then at the very least, if we do that, and then I've also hit up all our investors and I've said, look, are you guys down for it, right? You guys, do you want to match our donation basically, or match our fund? And since then, it's just been pouring in. People are matching it over and over and over again. So, you know, we're taking 10, 15, 20K, and that's now becoming 100K fund, because these people who were able to put in 500,000 can now just put in, you know, another 10K, and it's actually going to not like a donation. It's not like, oh yeah, this was nice. It's actually going to meaningful ROI. Give me a sec. I'm just gonna open the door for my, yeah, give me a sec. Yeah. So
Nice.
we just go into meaningful ROI.
So this interview goes out to a community of 1,200 agency leaders, of which I suspect 1,170 of them are white males. What's your message to those people?
So I think, hang on, so I think that if I was to give one single message to them, you know, there's so many things you could say. You could say like donating and all that stuff, but I would actually say just like get more informed about this, because I went to the protest yesterday, and someone had someone basically had a billboard or had a board which said that like silence is not an option, basically. And I realized that like for most people, even if you don't know what to specifically do, at the very least, if you can actually just like be informed about it, like that's all we are. So there's things like, there's a site called like Join Change Zero, very good site to go on and just learn about the fact that like there are these systematic things in there. So at the minimum, I would just say like be actively informed. Join Change Zero, blacklivesmatter.com. It's like things which will actively get you informed, because as we said at the beginning, the biggest thing is not that people are like, you know, like overtly racist, or, you know, they're out there going, you know, you this, you that. It's more like there's just these systematic things they're not actually aware of. And just being more informed is just a good start.